All right, welcome back to another segment of Good Vibes. I'm Martin Falls, joined by Debbie Cox DeNova. She's with us each and every week as we discuss different topics. Debbie, good to see you again. How are you?
Good to see you as well.
All right, we got another great topic, rising from failure, because whether you're in business or sports or wherever you may be, you're going to have pitfalls.
Yes.
You're going to have roadblocks or road bumps.
Yeah.
How do you pick yourself up from that? It's a great topic today.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a really important topic, like you said, in sports, but also in performance of life, because failure is just to be expected in life. And if you don't know how to recover quickly from it, then what can happen is that you can, short term, you can have compromises in your performance. Long term, you can have compromises in your health. Over the weekend, I went to surf camp for the first time. I had to learn how to swim prior to that a couple weeks ago. Went straight to surf camp, and I have a picture that I posted of just the ugliest fall, my first time on the wave, and really just eating the wave, and what a fear I had of that moment, exactly. And the mindset that I had to put on to expect that, right? To expect that failure in order to have the consistency to keep going in order to get better. And with athletes and with people in general, it is really about your mindset. So we talk a lot of, in sports performance, about the physical ability, your agility, your speed, your power, all of that. But what we're really talking about here is mental, emotional speed and agility. Sports psychologist Bill Bessick, who's a world famous sports psychologist, says that he tells his athletes 30 seconds, no more, to have a human reaction, right? We have failure, we have disappointment, it puts us in a little bit of a slump. That's normal. That's a normal human reaction. We should expect that. But there are 3 steps that we should take. First, acknowledge it. Acknowledge that something just went wrong. Let yourself have that moment if you like. And then you have to put a stop to the thoughts. Because if we're not careful, because of negativity bias, we'll start spinning the story, right? When this happens, it's a normal response to what happened, but then we have a physiological response and an emotional response, and then that translates into behavior. So now you're affecting your performance. So how do we put a stop to it? There are a number of different ways that we will talk about, but once you've stopped it, then you have to reroute it and take control, take power over your thoughts again, and this really is the difference. We were just talking about before the break, in watching an interview with Bill Bessick talking about Tom Brady and how physically Tom Brady had, and I don't know if you know this or not, he has performed, he actually measures physically the worst as a quarterback. The slowest arm, lowest vertical. But the thing that makes him the GOAT with six Super Bowls under his belt is that he has a strong power of the mind. And a lot of that is how do you recover? How fast do you recover from your setbacks? How are you actually framing up failures in the first place? And he has a really good way of bringing himself back online and staying in the game. And part of that really is what to expect. But then, like I said, rerouting and bringing your nervous system back online.
My dad had reconnected that to me when I was 12 years old in the punt, pass, and kick, and I'd won a couple of divisions, and I was going to New Orleans.
Yeah.
And the competition was getting really stiff. I made the comment to my dad, I don't think I can win that one. Wrong state. Bought me a plaque that still hangs in my office.
Yeah.
And your mind can overcome a lot of things.
Yes, it can.
You just got to put yourself on an island sometime, and like I heard Mike Detillier say and others say, you got to have a short memory.
You do.
If you get beat on one play, the play's over.
That's it.
Line up again.
That's it. It's really about putting a stop to it. I really loved how Mike said it's amnesia. It's amnesia for the moment, at least, so you can keep performing. At some point in time, you want to review your performance so that you can learn from your failures, because that really is the gift of, it's like failing like a scientist, right? You expect that on the first experiment, you're going to have failure, and it's going to maybe be the ugliest failure, but if you look at your failures as opportunities to learn and get better, then with each quote-unquote failure, you improve to your end goal. So yes, you have to have amnesia in the moment so you're not carrying it with you, because that will create a whole host of physiological, psychological things that will hamper your performance. And like Bobby says, you got to compartmentalize, right? You got to like know exactly what you're doing in the moment, not take all of this extra stuff with you mentally and emotionally. And then later on, it's important that you review. But I heard it said like you want to burn your ships, right? Like like your dad, like you want to make sure that you're 110% in. You're going for it. You're not giving yourself the opportunity to get out whenever there's failure. To talk yourself into, well, maybe I'm no good at this. Maybe I should not. Maybe especially if you're on a losing streak, right? It's never going to get any better, right? No. 110% commitment each and every single time. And if you're like that, then what will happen is that with each time you fail, maybe you'll have a moment. But then you'll go into performance evaluation so that you can actually learn something, improve your performance, and not take the past with you into the present and the future.
And we could talk more about it, but I've always told people I love to be around overachievers.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the most talented
No.
people around, whether athletics, whether whatever the case. I always want to be next to an overachiever because mentally they're always in gear,
Yeah.
trying to get better,
Yeah.
trying to get better.
Oh, yes. Bill Bessick says your talent's going to take you only so far. After that, it really is your mindset. Average players, I mean, you do have to have some sort of talent and capacity to do what you're doing, right? But there are people who are B-rated players who make it really, really far because they have a killer mindset. They're willing to keep getting up over and over and over again, framing up their failures as just part of the process, and then moving forward powerfully each and every single time. And it really is about taking the negative chemicals that are associated typically with failure and then using strategies to produce positive chemicals in your body so that you can move forward in a powerful way without a hitch.
Rolling stones gather no moss.
There you go.
Whether you're in high school, college, pros, really doesn't matter. On my high school teams, let's take basketball, for example. If it was a close game and somebody was going to get fouled and go take a free throw at the end of the game, every one of the 5 starters, we all wanted to be fouled. We wanted to be at the free throw line at the end of the game.
Yeah.
That's rare. It's normally one person
Right.
that wants to be there. We all wanted to be there. So that kind of behavior is contagious.
Yes, it is. It is, and it's a strong. It shows a strong mental, emotional attitude, and your attitude is so important in all of this. But attitude can be developed, right? You have people who think that some people just have a winner's mindset, and some people just don't. It's not actually true. If that were true, then sports psychologists would be doing nothing, right? They're teaching people how to also create that mental agility, the mental power, the mental recovery, because really, sometimes we get burned out mentally and emotionally, and then it shows up in our physical performance. But being able to frame up these failures, these moments where things don't go as planned, is really important. And then creating strategies to bring those good chemicals online so that you can actually be in the moment and move forward. So first, fail like a scientist, right? Know that these are every single failure is an opportunity for improvement in performance, and it's all part of the process. Literally nobody, no matter how good you are, is going to get by in your sport or your life without failures, without setbacks, right? That can create a pressurized situation, though. And so what can happen is that you might know all of these things, and we've talked about this before. You might know what to do, but in the moment, your physical reaction is so offline, your nervous system is so dysregulated, and you're such in a state of arousal that it's difficult to bring yourself back on so that your performance actually increases again. So the first thing is to know your triggers, right? If you performed in your game before and you know that when something specific happens, or another player challenges you, or you miss that pass, or whatever it is, know the triggers, and then expect, obviously, work at 100% again with your performance, making sure that you're throwing everything you can at practice, making sure that you're there, but also rehearsing how you will behave when the trigger happens and you find yourself at game time. That's really, really important. Knowing, okay, it's going to happen. I might fail. What am I going to do if I fail, right? So being able to prepare for the worst case scenario is also important. Then you want to fall in love with the experience of butterflies and nervousness, right? You want to know that this is your body's natural way of performance enhancement. It creates that arousal in your sympathetic nervous system, right? And so if you want to bring yourself back online, it's basically about using a number of strategies. You can talk to yourself, okay? Problem is, we have a really tough time being easy on ourselves or being good to ourselves when something bad happens. So if you depersonalize it, like really actually pretend like it's a friend of yours that just made the mistake or just had the setback, what would you say, right? I mean, would you beat them up and say you're an idiot and you're never gonna go anywhere, you're never gonna amount to anything? Probably not. You're probably gonna pump them up and actually get them going. So if you depersonalize it and start talking to yourself in the same way, then you can bring yourself back online. The other thing is, go ahead.
I always thought that pressure, I used to tell this when I coached 8th graders at Vanderbilt when I was in college.
Yeah.
They asked me to go back and coach the 8th graders. And a couple of the kids one day was going, man, there's a lot of pressure to beat some of these better teams.
Yeah.
And I'd always tell them, pressure is the opportunity to do well.
Yes.
Pressure presents a platform for you that when you get on it, you can own it.
Yeah, 100% it can, yes. And so so you're in that pressure situation. You feel yourself going into nerves, right? You feel yourself, the disappointment, the self-talk starts coming in. So what you can do then, in addition to depersonalizing and giving yourself positive self-talk, is you can actually use something called havening, okay? So havening, at an extreme level, you don't want to do this on the field of play, because what you're doing basically is it's a sensory technique that basically has you produce good chemicals in your body. So it can be hugging yourself. You definitely don't want to be doing that on the field.
Yeah, really.
A lot of times you'll see people who are naturally havening. People do it naturally. They'll rub the back of their neck or the back of their head. Okay, it's basically calming your nervous system. It's basically telling yourself that everything's okay. Now, it's also a cue for social anxiety. So you don't want to be on in the middle of giving a meeting and wringing your hands, right? But you can do little micro havening techniques. Like rubbing your hands can actually be excitement, right? And it's still a havening technique, okay? So, little small hand gestures like rubbing, or you can literally block out stimulus. Which you see a lot of people do this when they're embarrassed or if they get bad news, they actually cover their eyes. It's a blocking out of the senses, okay? So if you see some pro athletes, like you see LeBron James on the side closing his eyes, he's in meditation, right? It's actually going into a different state of mind, blocking out all of the external sensory stimulation so that you can bring yourself to a place of regulation, but also of focus on what you're actually trying to achieve.
I noticed real quick, I've been doing these interviews for so many years. Some people get up and they're very poised. Their hands don't move. They're very proud. Most of the time I see people with their ink pens doing this or moving their ink pen.
Yeah.
They're using the pen to get rid of the nervous energy.
To discharge the nervous energy, absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that, but if you want to show and convey power and confidence, you want to try to minimize on all of the little fidgety things like the touching of yourself, the havening practices. And in those situations, it's really important to have a very good relationship with failure, with fear, right? To know that this is a natural feeling inside of myself. It doesn't mean that I'm going to mess up. It doesn't mean that I'm not qualified to do this. It's the body's natural way of performance enhancement, of creating a biochemical storm so that you can actually show up for what you're trying to do.
Just succeed more than you fail. You're going to fail.
Yeah.
Just succeed a little more and you'll be all right.
And you have to keep going to do that.
There you go. You're right. All right, Debbie, thank you so much. We'll be back next week for another segment of Good Vibes.